There's a $500 t-shirt that has no logo on it, no brand name, no visible stitching, nothing that would tell a stranger it cost more than a tank of gas. And it's selling out. Not to billionaires, to people earning $80,000 a year who are quietly behind on their retirement savings. That's not a coincidence, that's a trap. And it was designed specifically for you. The old status symbols, the loud logos, the flashy watches, the obvious flex, those are fading. What replaced them is something more insidious, something that feels like restraint, like taste, like you've finally arrived. It's called quiet luxury, and the psychology behind it is one of the most effective wealth extraction mechanisms the consumer economy has ever produced. Because at least when the logo was visible, you knew you were buying a brand. Now you're buying an identity. And identities are infinitely more expensive. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how this trap was built, why the middle class is its primary target, and, most importantly, what it's actually costing you in dollar terms that most people never calculate. First, let's define the battlefield. The middle class, broadly speaking, households earning between $50,000 and $150,000 a year, depending on where you live, occupies a very specific psychological position in modern consumer culture. They earn enough to have real spending choices, but not enough to be financially untouchable. That gap is where the trap lives. The genuinely wealthy, and we're talking top 1%, generational money, people whose accountants have accountants, those people don't need to signal anything. Their status is structural. It's embedded in relationships, access, ownership, and institutional power that no $500 t-shirt can replicate or threaten. The middle class doesn't have that. What the middle class has is income, and income, without the right behavior around it, is just a faster treadmill. So here's the dynamic. The middle class has enough money to participate in luxury consumption, but just barely. And just barely is the most dangerous financial position a person can be in. Because it means every purchase feels like it's within reach, even the ones that aren't. Quiet luxury understands this perfectly. Part 1. What quiet luxury actually is. The quiet luxury aesthetic, you've seen it even if you didn't know the name. Neutral colors, minimal branding, impeccable fabric. The kind of clothes that look simple until you notice how they hang. The kind of apartment that looks empty until you realize the emptiness costs $12,000 a square foot. The cultural moment that brought it mainstream was the HBO show Succession. The Roys don't wear logos. They wear $4,000 cashmere. They drive understated cars. Their wealth is communicated through texture and fit and subtle scarcity, not through anything a stranger on the street could immediately decode. And the audience watched that and thought, that's what taste looks like. That reaction was entirely predictable, because humans don't just want things, they want to belong to a category of people. And quiet luxury offered the middle class a new category, one that felt more sophisticated than old money ostentation, more refined than nouveau riche excess, and, critically, theoretically accessible. Brands understood this immediately. Searches for quiet luxury on Google jumped over 800% in 2023. Retailers, from Zara to Banana Republic to mid-tier department stores, launched entire lines explicitly marketed around the aesthetic. The emotional sell was, stop buying cheap, fast fashion. Invest in quality. Buy less, buy better. That sounds like financial wisdom. It isn't. And the difference matters enormously. Here's the question nobody's asking. Who actually benefits when the middle class upgrades from $40 t-shirts to $400 t-shirts? Not the middle class.
Part 2. The Psychology Engine. To understand why this works so well on a specific income bracket, you need to understand 3 psychological mechanisms that quiet luxury exploits with surgical precision. The first is aspirational identity. Humans are not purely rational economic actors. Every significant purchase is, to some degree, an identity statement. You're not just buying a product, you're buying the version of yourself that owns that product. The problem is that identity-based spending has no natural ceiling. Because identity is never complete, there's always a more refined version of yourself to purchase your way toward. quiet luxury is specifically engineered to trigger aspirational identity in people who are close enough to the aspiration to feel it, but far enough away to keep chasing it. It's the carrot on the string, always visible, never reached. The second mechanism is social comparison, but with a twist. Classic status signaling is upward comparison. You see someone with something, you want it. Quiet luxury adds a layer. It introduces downward distinction, the idea that loud, logo-heavy consumption is tacky, and that true sophistication means no one but the right people would even know. This is brilliant because it doesn't just pull you toward aspirational spending, it pushes you away from budget alternatives by associating them with a social category you don't want to be in. You're not buying Loro Piana because you want to impress strangers. You're buying it because you want to feel different from people who buy things to impress strangers. The trap is two-sided. The third mechanism is the quality rationalization. This is the one that's hardest to argue against because it contains a kernel of truth. The genuine argument goes, fast fashion is wasteful, low-quality items break down, buying one excellent thing instead of 5 mediocre things is actually the smarter financial move. And sometimes that's correct. A $300 pair of boots that lasts 10 years genuinely beats 5 $60 pairs that fall apart in 18 months. But that argument gets weaponized. It gets applied to categories where durability is irrelevant, like a cashmere sweater you'll wear 6 times before the aesthetic moves on. It gets used to justify a $4,000 bag as an investment when the resale math almost never works out in your favor. It becomes a permission slip, a story you tell yourself so the number on the price tag feels rational. The quiet luxury industry didn't invent this rationalization, but it perfected the packaging. Say you earn $95,000 a year. After taxes, you're taking home around $70,000. Now say you spend, conservatively, $4,000 a year on what you'd describe as investing in quality, $333 a month. That same $4,000 invested annually at 7% over 20 years becomes approximately $174,000. That's not a vacation, that's not a car, that's a down payment. It's a decade of financial optionality. It's the difference between being stuck in a job and having the leverage to leave one. The cashmere didn't give you that. The identity it sold you cost you that. Part 3. Why the middle class is the specific target. The wealthy don't need quiet luxury. They have actual quiet, actual access, actual networks, actual assets that compound regardless of what they wear. The lower end of the income spectrum can't afford to participate, so the aspiration loop doesn't engage the same way. The middle class is the perfect mark. And here's the structural reason. The middle class is the only group in modern consumer society that experiences what researchers call relative deprivation upward mobility anxiety at scale, which is a clinical way of saying you have enough to know what you're missing, but not enough to stop caring about the gap. When you grow up watching your parents stretch to afford the right neighborhood, the right school, the right car, not because they were vain, but because those things genuinely had consequences for social mobility, you absorb a deep lesson. Appearances matter. Belonging to the right visual category has real downstream effects. That lesson isn't wrong, but it calcifies into a spending reflex that outlasts its usefulness. And the consumer economy is extraordinarily good at finding that reflex and pulling it. Quiet luxury is the current optimal trigger. It combines the real anxiety about downward mobility with the aspirational promise of upward arrival. And it packages it as taste, not insecurity. That's why it works. It doesn't feel like status anxiety. It feels like you've finally developed an aesthetic. But here's where it gets genuinely dark. Quiet luxury isn't just consuming your money, it's consuming your time horizon. Part 4. The time horizon problem. There's a concept in behavioral economics called present bias. Humans systematically overvalue the present relative to the future. A dollar today feels worth more than a dollar in 10 years, even accounting for inflation, even when the math says otherwise. Consumer marketing exists almost entirely to exploit present bias. The point of advertising is to make the future feel abstract and the product feel urgent and real. Quiet luxury is an especially effective vehicle for present bias because it cloaks the urgency in the language of patience and deliberateness. You're not impulse buying, you're making a considered investment. You researched the brand, you waited for the right piece. You're being intentional, but the outcome is the same. Money left your account today for something that will not compound. The future self, the one who needed that money to have options, got nothing. And the future self is always the one who pays. The genuinely wealthy think in decades. They think about what their money will be worth in 20 years, not what their wardrobe will communicate next season. That's not a personality trait. It's a structural advantage. When you already have enough, the urgency of appearing to have enough disappears. You're free to be boring with your money. The middle class doesn't have that luxury, no pun intended. They're using consumption to manage social anxiety in real time, and that's always expensive. Part 5. The specific spend creep pattern. It doesn't usually happen all at once. It's incremental. And incremental is what makes it invisible. It starts with one upgrade, a good jacket, a quality pair of shoes, both defensible, both genuinely better than what they replaced. But quiet luxury aesthetics don't stop at clothing, they spread. Suddenly the kitchen needs updating because the aesthetic of the home has to match the wardrobe. The weekend bag is wrong, the water bottle brand is wrong, the phone case is wrong. The skincare routine, which is its own multi-billion-dollar quiet luxury ecosystem, needs to reflect the same restrained sophistication. This is called lifestyle inflation, and quiet luxury provides an ideological framework that makes lifestyle inflation feel like curation. Most people never add up what the full ecosystem costs. They track individual purchases. They don't track the category. That's intentional on the industry's part. Individual items feel justifiable. The pattern is what breaks budgets. A reasonable rough count for someone fully participating in the quiet luxury aesthetic. Clothing, $300 to $600 a month. Skincare and grooming, $150 to $300. Home goods and decor upgrades, $100 to $200 a month, averaged over a year. Dining and hospitality choices that match the aesthetic, $200 to $400 extra per month over cheaper alternatives. Conservative total, $750 to $1,500 per month, above what a non-aesthetic-driven lifestyle of similar quality would cost. Per year, that's $9,000 to $18,000. Over a decade, at 7% investment returns, $125,000 to $250,000. That's the price of the identity. Not everything in the quiet luxury movement is a trap. Some of it is genuinely good financial behavior in disguise. Buying fewer, better things. Resisting fast fashion's churn. Developing taste that doesn't chase every trend. Those are real virtues. The trap isn't quality. The trap is the identity framework built around quality. When buying something well-made becomes a way to feel like a certain kind of person, rather than just a practical decision about durability and value, that's when it becomes expensive. That's when the spending never stops, because the identity is never complete. The question to ask, the one that separates good financial behavior from aspirational consumption, is simple. Would you buy this if nobody could see it? If the honest answer is no, that's not a quality decision. That's a signaling decision. And signaling decisions compound very differently than investment decisions.
Part 6. What the actually wealthy do instead. There's a reason The Millionaire Next Door has never gone out of print. The research it documented in the 1990s still holds. The people who actually accumulate wealth, not income, wealth,
consistently behave in ways that contradict what the consumer economy wants them to do. They drive unremarkable cars. They live in houses that are modest relative to their income. They don't confuse their lifestyle with their identity, so their lifestyle doesn't need to be continuously upgraded. This isn't because they lack taste. It's because they understand a distinction that quiet luxury deliberately blurs: the difference between consuming wealth and building it. Consuming wealth is spending money to feel wealthy. Building wealth is deploying money to create assets that generate more money. The two are not compatible at moderate income levels. You're doing one or the other, and the compounding is the only path out. Part 7. How to audit your own spend. There are 3 practical questions worth sitting with, not in a self-flagellating way, but with genuine curiosity. The first, what's the total annual cost of your aesthetic? Not individual items, the whole ecosystem. Clothing, home, grooming, dining choices influenced by image. Add it up. The number will probably surprise you. The second, what is that number worth in 20 years if invested instead? Use a compound interest calculator. Plug in your real number. Let the result land without immediately explaining it away. The third, what financial outcome would make you feel genuinely secure? Not wealthy in a fantasy sense, actually secure. No longer anxious about job loss, able to leave a bad situation, funded retirement. Specific number. And then, how far away are you from that number, accounting for current savings behavior? Most people don't do this calculation because it's uncomfortable. The aesthetic is, among other things, a very effective distraction from that discomfort. But the discomfort is information. It's telling you something about the gap between the identity you're performing and the financial foundation that identity is sitting on. Here's the one thing to take from this. Quiet luxury isn't selling you clothes. It's selling you a feeling, the feeling that you've arrived. And that feeling is deliberately designed to be just out of reach, so you keep buying toward it. The truly wealthy don't need to perform arrived. They are arrived. And they got there, almost universally, by making their money more important than their image. That's not about deprivation. It's about knowing the difference between a purchase that builds your life and a purchase that performs it. Every time you're about to spend money on something quiet luxury adjacent, one question is worth asking. Is this building my life, or is it performing it? The answer will tell you everything you need to know. If this hit differently than most finance content, it's because most finance content talks about tactics. The accounts, the deductions, the spreadsheets. Those matter. But tactics applied to a broken spending psychology don't fix anything. Drop a comment with the honest number. What does your full aesthetic cost you per year when you actually add it up? Not to be judged, just to make it real. And if you want to go deeper on the actual mechanics, the accounts, the compounding, the specific moves that build the foundation underneath, that's the next video. Worth watching before you make your next investment in quality.